All right, everyone give a round of applause to our next speaker.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
The one and only A Marzulli. Like I said, he's been host of all 9 Watchers series, the 9th one being produced right now, author, researcher, and a radio host as well.
Acceleration Radio.
Yeah, and so much more. I definitely, the last book that I had a chance to read, the evidence, what's the...
On the Trail of a Nephilim? Further evidence? Further evidence.
That one.
Further
that
evidence.
One. Amazing, amazing book. And On the Trail of Nephilim is out, and I think you will all enjoy it. So, there's so much to talk about. I guarantee you will run out of time, just like we did on the radio show the other night.
Sure.
But I guess we might as well start with, let's take us to the first slide, because you always tour everywhere in South America. Mm-hmm. And one thing I love about you and Richard, when you guys go to produce the Watcher series, is you don't go to mainstream museums. You find little local ones in South America that have something that hasn't had a chance to be censored. And that's why you were able to find mummies that, with giant skulls, skeletons with giant skulls. Sure. So much amazing stuff that if the mainstream media knew about, they would have censored it before you got to it. So that I have to applaud you for. Let's go to your first slide, and this one is also in Peru?
No, this is Sacsayhuaman, ancient megalithic structures, Nephilim architecture. The Nephilim, for those of you who don't know, are the unholy union of, and I'm just going to use this, an extraterrestrial nefarious entity. Let's just call it that. In other words, you could call a fallen angel an extraterrestrial nefarious entity. When I say angel, everyone has this preconceived notion, so we have to sweep that away, and we'll just call it a nefarious extraterrestrial. And so what we're looking at here are ancient megalithic stones. Megalithic meaning huge. Some of these weigh over 120 tons. They are made of andesite stone. Now we know at least they come from the Neolithic. The Neolithic is about 3,500 years ago, let's just say. You could even push it back further, 4,000 years. And 4,000 years ago, they didn't have ironworks. They had copper chisels. Andesite, which is what you see here, in Sacsayhuaman. By the way, this is near Cusco, Peru. It's up in the Andes about 12,000 feet above sea level. And the first thing that comes to mind is, wait a minute, 120-ton stones, how did they move them? Well, andesite is 7 on the Mohs hardness, a diamond being 10. So here you are in the Neolithic, you've got a copper chisel. Are you kidding me? It's an impossibility. And yet archaeologists tell us, like, well, I guess the technology that they use is somehow lost from us. Isn't that convenient? Well, I can say pigs fly too, and they're not going to fly, are they? I mean, it's really a straw man argument. It crashes of its own weight. It doesn't work.
Let me go back to something important with regards to Nephilim. There's a passage in the Bible that talks about the angels came from above and saw
nefarious extraterrestrial entities.
And said that the women of earth were beautiful, and they mated with them.
Right.
And hence, that's where the Nephilim come from, right?
It's the unholy union of the nefarious extraterrestrial entity and the women of Earth creating this hybrid being. What does that sound like? This hybrid being known as the Nephilim. It also results in the flood of Noah. Now that can be, some of you may think that it's just mythos, and yet we've got a flood story even here in California with the Chumash Indians. They have a flood story. The flood stories are all over the globe. They may differ slightly depending on where you go, but it's there. Look, folks, what we can all agree on is this. There's an outside agency that's very interested in manipulating our DNA. And they have left traces, not only in Sacsayhuaman, I'm ready to jump out of my seat here, not only in Sacsayhuaman, but all over the globe, even on Catalina Island, and we'll get to that. Let me click through some of this and give you an idea. Look at the size of this megalith here. Look at the size of this. Here's Ron Moorhead, Bigfoot investigator, basically 5'10" man. And then you've got this. And look at the stonework. Look at the polygonal shaped stones. There's not one that's the same. Every one is all of these stones are completely different. And when you're there, it's like one thing looking at the pictures. When you're there, it's 12,000 feet above sea level, and there's a slight breeze blowing, and there's a storm front coming in, and the clouds are turbulent, and you hear thunder in the distance, and you're standing 50 feet away from this thing. It's just mind-blowing. Absolutely captivatingly mind-blowing. Look at the stones and ask yourself, am I Neolithic? Okay, let's say they had copper chisels or something, some kind of saw or whatever that could do this. Why do this? Why get up on a Monday morning? We're going to build a wall. We're going to make it as hard as we can to do. Sounds like a good plan. I mean, are you kidding me? It's the height of, it's crazy, unless you can do it without any problem. And whoever these builders were, they had the ability to do this stuff. It was easy for them. And in some ways it's playful. Look at it. Look at the curve here. I mean, how many people here work with wood? And you know when anytime you make a circle, it's really difficult. And yet all these stones, and you can see like in here, like the different angles of the stones, that angle is not just in the front of the stone. That angle is dressed clear through the entire rock. It's wacky. I mean, it really is. And this site has stood the test of time for thousands of years. When the Spanish arrived, they asked the Inca, who built it? Because they were just mesmerized. Who built this thing? You know what the Inca said? The giants built them. Direct quote. So I've come to call this fallen angelic architecture, Nephilim technology, or fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. That's what my hypothesis is in all this.
I have two observations I got to make with this. First of all, 120-ton rock. How could you even move that? I mean, how many men would it take dragging on, rolls of logs?
That's what they always do,
right?
The whole rolling log thing.
Yeah,
Doesn't work.
120 tons? How is that even possible?
Look at these and how large they are and how perfectly they're placed. And how would you, without cranes, oh, we got to take a 1/4 inch off the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, lift it up again, Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay, start chiseling. A couple hours, we'll try lowering again. I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
And yet the stones fit absolutely perfectly together. They do. You can look at them. That's when you're there, you just go, huh? And you can't fit a human hair, a sliver of paper through these joints. And there's no mortar. This is what's called ashlar construction. The joints are so perfect and the interiors are so polished, and because it's piezoelectric stone, it may conduct electricity, which gets into a whole other idea of what these things were. They're not sacrificial places. Well, they might have been that on some level. But we think they're part of a gigantic worldwide global network of a grid. That's what we think it is.
The other observation I had, you actually just said it, human hairs. You cannot fit a human hair between these rocks. What can we do today? Even the best masons on this planet can probably not even build anything with rocks such as these where you can't have an area where you can't fit something in between.
I've gone to architects, I've gone to engineers, I've shown them the pictures, they all look at me and laugh nervously, and rightfully so. Because, well, how could you duplicate this in modernity? Can you take this and duplicate it in the modern day? And they kind of go, well, time and material, with enough money, anything's possible. Lasers, diamond saws, cranes, none of this is there. In fact, the archaeologists and anthropologists have not found any trace of the builders or what the builders used to construct this stuff. It's just not there. So whoever did it left and took all their goodies with them. You'll notice I affectionately call this Inca slop above this. By the way, this andesite stone, all in through Sacsayhuaman, is quarried from about 40 to 50 miles away and 2,000 feet lower. So now the puzzle, I mean, it's one thing if we're just moving the stone 10 feet, no problem. We're moving the stone 40 to 50 miles away.
Uphill.
And all they got is llamas? I mean, what are you going to do? Harness 5,000 llamas together?
Can 5,000 even hold 120 tons?
I don't think it can happen. Yeah. So what's interesting is when Rick and I interviewed Robert Salas, and some of you may know him,
yes,
and he talked about the Malmstrom UFO encounter and how in another site just maybe a couple hundred miles away, a very similar occurrence occurred. UFO over the base, except it lifted up a 21-ton blast door and just moved it to the side. Lifted up a 21-ton blast door and moved it to the side. What's interesting is in the biblical narrative, what we see are when these beings, the good ones, show up, they manipulate energy, time, space, and matter in ways that defy our physics. And they do it all through the biblical narrative. The problem is most people won't look at that because they've been grown up in the church, let's say, and they just go click. That's religion. We're not talking about religion here. We're talking about the supernatural. We're talking about a cosmic war which has been raging in another dimension, which is now spilling out over onto our dimension. And we're seeing that, in my opinion, manifest everywhere. The question is, are these visitors, we'll just call them that for now, are they benevolent or malevolent? Is there a litmus test we can use, and how do we know?
With the regards to the polygon shapes, a lot of people say that geometry played a big role in the ancient times. Do you think that's just pure coincidence that they made them that way, or is that the way they were found and they just quarried them and cut them to fit with the other ones that way? Do you think there's a significance of why they're the shape they are?
Yeah, I think whoever the builders were, there's no signature, by the way, on any of these places. Whoever these builders were, the actual edifice itself is the signature. And when, it's so funny, you'll get tourists who will go like this. Where's the next place we go to? They don't get it. They don't get it. I mean, because it's just like, oh, stones far out. There's a wall. Okay, where's your hamburger? I mean, it's like Homer Simpson at Sacsayhuaman. But that's what it's like. It's like Homer Simpson. And it's like you stand there and you just go, wait a minute, all bets are off. These stones are andesite. They're like 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. There's no way you can do this even in modernity. You'd be hard-pressed to do it. And this is thousands of years ago. So it's at least enigmatic. And archaeologists, if they're, I've talked to several off the record who will actually tell you what they think. There's no way. There's no way the Inca did this, or anybody else that we know of that built this stuff. And the idea of the technology is lost, in my opinion, is just a straw man argument.
There's 2 words I have to say with regards to those tourists who don't care. Cognitive dissonance.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
They're faced with something that they can't grasp. There's nothing in their paradigm. It's like, click, let's just leave and go get a burger someplace.
Yes. Now, where is this?
This is Ollantaytambo.
Okay.
Say that 3 times fast.
Ollantaytambo.
He took the Ollantaytambo challenge and he won. So you'll notice here, this is what's fascinating about these rocks. The archaeologists say, this is the temple of the sun. Nonsense. You're calling it the temple of the sun. You have no stinking idea of what this thing was called thousands of years ago. You're making it up. And this is what they do. I'm getting a little too excited. I'll calm down.
Passion is good.
You can see how vexed I get because it's just a bunch of hogwash. Yeah. How do you know it was the temple of the sun or the temple of the condor? You're making this stuff up. You have no idea what the builders called it, or in fact, if it even was a temple. Look at this. Look at the stone. Look at the stone over there. What the heck is that for? Why are you going through all this? Look at this one. What is that? We believe that all these stones are part of a machine, albeit it's not a machine that we can reproduce today. And guess what? Many of the parts of the machine get carted off and used in other buildings. So it's like Humpty Dumpty. We'll never be able to put the thing back together. But this is all in Ollantaytambo. The Inca took it and built over it. Look at the borehole there. You can actually see the turnings of a drill. Again, it's andesite stone. Where's the drill? There's a drill mark. It's like right there. Oh, well, I don't know how they did that, LA. Of course you don't. You have no idea how they did that. Because thousands of years ago, what's some guy doing this with a chisel for like 80 years or something? I mean, come on.
Multiple generations.
Look at the trapezoidal shape. Look at the stonework. Again, we know that, Richard found this, we know that there seems to be a correlation, there was a paper on the internet, between trapezoidal shapes and piezoelectric stone, which conducts electricity and perhaps sends out signals. Once again, we didn't put all the dots together till we were done the tour with Brian Forrester, and Richard and I've never had this with another human being, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. We're in Cusco, we had this wonderful dinner, and just Rick and I are walking up the street together, and we're talking about all this stuff, and all of a sudden, and I mean this, we get this cosmic download. And I'm looking at him going, are you getting what I'm getting? He's going like this. I'm holding my head going, oh my God, I don't believe it. What do you got? And we realized, and look, we're not the first person to get this because other people realized that there was a grid over the planet. And we put it together. We had this download. We went, oh my God, it's a grid. And then what terrified us, I'm kind of giving you the punchline, but I'll do it now anyway. Who cares? Time is short. There's an ancient prophecy which says it'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. 2,000-year-old prophecy. Wow, what the heck does that mean? The student of prophecy has to go back to the days of Noah and understand what's going on in the days of Noah. that differentiates it from any other time in history. And what we see are these nefarious extraterrestrials which are mating with the humans and creating a hybrid race. That's the first thing we see. We also know now from archaeology that there seems to be a grid system over the planet that was wiped out in the flood of Noah. What do we have now? That's over the entire Earth that creates a connectivity. Right now, it's passive. But the internet.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yes.
We are all connected. And right now, it's benevolent. It's passive. Can you imagine if it falls in the hands of a nefarious human being or otherwise who will use it? Oh, that's preposterous. May I point you to NSA? Don't get paranoid with me. Just travel with me, okay? Just travel. I mean, NSA, I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, how many people this week called, this recording or this call may be recorded and monitored for quality assurance? I want to throw the phone against the wall. How many calls do you need for quality control, for crying out loud? Come on. Come on. For training purposes, baloney. You're monitoring everything that we say, everything that we do. In some ways, it's already here, but it's still passive. At some point in time, when we can no longer buy, sell, or trade unless we've got this embedded chip, that's when all bets are off.
Well, remember, some people think that there's no million people listening because Snowden said that any given time there are 1.4 million people that are being watched in a micro scale. And we're not talking about aggregate in a town. It's not that someone's on the other line listening. No. By the time me and you have had this conversation, everything's been recorded, everything's been transcribed, cross-checked with every text you've ever sent, cross-checked with every email, and every of your friends' email, and so on and so forth. That is what's the world we're living in now. So you're right.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it's passive now, but wait till it gets active.
In the wrong hands.
Yeah, it's already in the wrong hands, I think.
Here's the original wall. Notice the joint and the joinery, and you can see that it's cut into the hillside. They actually used the indigenous rock and transported this rock from across the valley. And here's the actual site. Oh, no, look at this. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, again, who would waste their time to do this? Yeah.
Because they can. And that cut goes all the way back through the rock, Dr. J.
And this is another one of those 120-ton or giant rocks that's impossible to carry.
Can you imagine? And look at how fine the joinery is. I'm telling you, when you're there, when you run your hand over the stone and you look at it, and you feel the air and the sun and you hear the sound. It's in some ways it's mystical because I realized I was touching a technology which I knew nothing about, and nor did anyone else on the planet for all that matters. Lots of conjecture. Look at this. We have no idea what this does or why they carved it like this. And here's that's all that's left of the Temple of the Sun nonsense.
And this is still Ollantaytambo.
Ollantaytambo. You'll notice here this funny, weird staircase, which looks like the staircase goes down, and underneath it, a staircase goes up. There's a place called in Cusco, right before you get to Sacsayhuaman. There's a tunnel that goes from Sacsayhuaman underground to the Coricancha, miles away in Cusco. The government has sealed it off. I mean, if you're really, you can get down there. But people have gone in and have never come out. I'm not making this stuff up. And what's interesting, when we were there, part of the rock, which was the entrance, had broken away. Okay? And I have a shot of this. I'm standing on these tiny little steps that are going down. And directly over me is another set of steps. What am I looking at? What's that? Why is there a set of steps going down? And then on the ceiling, there's another set of steps. I wouldn't be able to use that. Are we looking at some sort of anti-gravity? And apparently underneath it, there's a labyrinth of passageways. And no one knows where they go, and they've never been explored.
A lot of people talk about a lot of these ancient structures being connected on either the same latitude or latitude lines, or ley lines.
Yes.
Did you find any correlation with this in any other structure?
We found lots of correlation. I'll just tell you a quick story. I didn't include it in the presentation, so I'll make it real quick. There's a place up near Bolivia, right by Lake Titicaca, 13,000 feet above sea level, called Silistani. And the towers are made of basalt. Again, 6 or 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, Neolithic, copper chisels, except these towers are all in the round. If you want to do something in the round, that's one thing. But let's make it even more complex. Let's make it conical shaped like this. Narrower at the bottom, wider at the top, which means that every millimeter that you go up, you're changing the radius. It's like, hello. And then the stones are all carved inside of them. some sort of a resonance. They were blown out. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to look at that. When Chase Klotsky, who was with us, and UFO wrote a bunch of books on this stuff, amazing field investigator. She's loaded down with all of her equipment. She's got Gauss meters and this meter and that meter and everything else, and she's all packed in with batteries. She walked into the circle of one of the Silistani towers. The batteries drained immediately. She went, whoa, what's going on? She went down, reloaded all of the batteries, came back, did the same thing. Strike two, you're out, Chase, it's over. And it drained all the batteries. We believe that these sites were deliberately laid in certain areas, all in high places. There was a definite connectivity, at least that's what we posit, between all these sites, and it's global.
It's fascinating. And one of the things we're going to get, I'll wait till we get to it, but you actually showed how that is connected to this. This is still Peru?
This is, when you're looking at, when I'm standing here, I'll back up a little bit. I'm standing here, and I'm looking this way.
Okay.
And in front of me, this is what I see. There's Brian Forrester. That's the Sacred Valley, which is absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely breathtaking. And then you see the remnants of whatever happened was cataclysmic. Whatever happened threw the stones down. And guess what? We see the same type of cataclysm everywhere in Peru and in Bolivia. Sites like Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, Cusco, it's all the same. Something cataclysmic. The flood of Noah. I mean, can you imagine if the earth really was, if it wasn't, like some of these shows, it's a localized flood only in the Mediterranean area. What if it wasn't? What if it was a global flood? And remember, every culture has this flood narrative in their storyline somewhere, in their culture. So we see that stones were thrown down. Remember that one I showed you that was all cut at the very beginning? That laid on the bottom floor, about 1,000 feet below this. America's
Yes.
Stonehenge.
This is what I was referring to.
I was just there. And again, when you go to these places, right, and I've looked at pictures of this. I wrote about it before I went there. But about 3 months ago, my wifey and I had a conference up in Maine, and Stonehenge in America is in New Hampshire. It was only like an hour and a half drive from Portland, and we set an extra day on our calendar, and we got to meet the Stone family, and we spent a day with them. What you're looking at here, this is a 4,000-year-old site. A henge is a circle. You're looking at a slab of stone, granite, okay, which is about 10 feet long and 6 feet wide. All around it is a channel that's cut into it. And you'll notice right down here, the channel connects to what we believe is a sacrificial table, and it's to sacrifice a human being on. It's not a deer, not bunny rabbits. It's human sacrifice. And in many of the sites that we went to, even in one place in Corral, which we don't have time to talk about, ancient city down in Peru, the oldest city in North, Central, and South America is called Corral. And it reminds me of Teotihuacan. The first thing I asked the guide, the docent, as he was taking around, giving us the party line. First question out of my mouth, have you found evidence of human sacrifice? He looks at me like this, kind of looks around, kind of doesn't know what to say, and he goes, yes, we have. But we're not supposed to talk about that.
You had a chance, it's probably not there, but you had a chance maybe to see if there's any 4,000, 3,000-year-old blood maybe in those channels?
There might be a way to do that, and that's something we talked about when I was there, and I would love to do it. So the henge is a circle. This is in New Hampshire, remember, and it's about 4,000 years old. So it completely, the Native Americans did not do anything like this. This is why we travel with Chief Joseph Riverwind. His new book, which we got on the website, that's what the old ones say. It talks about their legends, their oral tradition, their stories, which talk about a race that was already here in the Americas when they got here. A race of red-haired, giant, six-fingered, cannibalistic beings that were here, that were incredibly malevolent and evil. And you'll see evidence of this in just a few minutes that I uncovered on Catalina Island, which is like right outside here, right? Hello. So here you are in the circle, and all this, remember, Native Americans didn't do this, with all due respect to First Nation people. They just didn't do this stuff. So in the middle of the henge, Outside of it, you've got all these markers. You've got the winter solstice, the summer solstice, the equinoxes, the lunar rises. All this stuff is like with standing stones. It's a very complex site. And in fact, much of the site wasn't even known until the Stone family started to clear the land, and they find these megaliths like hundreds of yards away, which correspond to the summer solstice standing stone, the longest day of the year, right? So watch what happens. So Kelsey Stone is a college student, goes on Google Earth. Here's America's Stonehenge. That's the center. He draws a line out to the standing stone, which is somewhere out in here on the property, okay? But he keeps extending the line. He just wants to see where the line goes. He's a 23-year-old kid with probably too much time on his hands. He's on Google Earth and he's having fun. And he draws the line out, and he draws the line out, and he draws the line out, and he intersects the center trilithon in Stonehenge, England. My friends, you cannot do this in antiquity. It is a physical impossibility to have string that's long enough from Stonehenge to site the summer standing stone. You can't do it. It has to be done from the air. It's got to be triangulated. But wait, it gets better. Kelsey Stone extends the line further, and he winds up in Beirut, Lebanon. And Beirut, Lebanon was the home of the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians were descendants of the Canaanites. And the Canaanites are what? Drum roll, a Nephilim tribe. Hence, we call it fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. But it gets even better because we extended the line. Because we knew that Kelsey didn't understand really what he had discovered. Because he wasn't looking through a historical, biblical narrative, as it were. So we extended the line further. And, whoops, what happened? Okay. Let me see where we are. Here we go. And we found it very close to Mount Hermon. According to the book of Enoch, Mount Hermon is the place where the 200 nefarious extraterrestrials landed in the days of Jared. That's the place. But then it gets really bizarre. This is Gilgal Raphaim. The Raphaim are specifically a Nephilim tribe. That name denotes a specific genetic characteristic of one Nephilim tribe. Remember, there seems to be an outside agency that's manipulating the genome.
Look at first glance at this. I would have thought it's a crop circle.
It does look like a crop circle, doesn't it? Yeah. So
that's in Israel, right?
Here, that's in Israel. Here's Gilgal Raphaim, 47.5 miles from the line. Here is Baalbek, 47.5 miles from the line. What does the 47.5 miles mean? I have no idea. But we find it a very interesting coincidence. This is what I mean. Whoever did this stuff did it with great deliberation. Baalbek is the home of the largest stones ever quarried on this planet by anybody, period. But what's interesting, there's all this nonsense about, oh, the Romans built it, or blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, so the Romans built it. So why take a 1,400-ton stone and quarry it and then move this thing? How? Well, this one archaeologist a year and a half ago decided to go to Baalbek and to see, well, let's just dig around the stone of the pregnant woman, which, by the way, is 70 feet long, 14 feet high, 16 feet wide, 1,400 tons. And they're digging, and to their absolute amazement, they find two more stones underneath, and they're bigger. They're bigger than the stones. And they're going, oh my gosh, now we're looking at 1,800-ton stones. It's as long as the room and almost as wide. I mean, think about it. You don't get up on a Monday morning and go, guys, we're gonna lift some heavy stones. I mean, it just goes, what? And yet the archaeologists and the anthropologists, and here's the deal, they will never ever look at the supernatural. Why? Because in the Darwinian paradigm, which is held sacrosanct in both academia and the scientific community, that's the operating paradigm, there is no room for the supernatural. Nefarious extraterrestrial entities, which are able to manipulate matter, time, space, and energy in ways that we don't know, in my opinion, fit what the supernatural might be.
You said 1,800 tons?
1,800.
That's 3,600 million pounds.
It's stupid.
3,600,000 pounds. How is that even possible?
It's absolutely stupid all day long. I mean, it really is. I mean, it really is. It's just
sad, the world we live in.
It makes no sense at all. But the moment you figure nefarious extraterrestrial technology and Nephilim architecture, you're off to the races. See, because I'm not tied into academia, I can actually use my brain to think if I want to. I'm not in this rigid box of you think of the Darwinian paradigm, and if you don't do the Darwinism, we shoot you. And that's what they do. If you don't believe me, watch Ben Stein's movie Expelled. Watch what happens when they just mention intelligent design. You're fired. No tenure. No salary. You're disgraced. No papers. And that's what happens. Watch this movie. Don't argue with me. Watch this movie. And then if you want to argue with me, you can email me, and I'll try to answer your email along with 3,000 unopened emails in the queue. But we'll try. We do try. So this is the mummy from 1842. And we're down there, Richard and I, the first time, and this thing stunk up the museum like crazy. It came from the Huacaros, the grave robbers.
Back in Peru?
Back in Peru,
Okay.
in Paracas. We know that the Paracas people show up on the west coast of Peru about 3,500 years ago. We have no idea, nor does anyone else, where these people came from. These are the guys with elongated skulls, and you can see one of those skulls in the back. That's a model of one of them. Red hair, highly elongated, no sagittal suture. A normal human being has a frontal plate, a sagittal suture, which divides the two parietal plates, and then an occipital plate in the rear. Many of the skulls that we see do not have this. They have one parietal plate. And of course the skeptic goes, well, that might be that disease called, I forget, it's a long name, but basically the sagittal suture disappears. Well, that's convenient. How about a 25-year-old skull? It usually happens and occurs in a person like in old age, advanced age. We've got a 25-year-old female where the sagittal suture just vanished. So here we have this mummy from 1842. In 1842, academics were warring with each other. It's all cradle headboarding, doggone it. They bind the heads of the infants. That's what they do. And they shape the heads. Okay, we get that. They shape some of the heads. It is cradle headboarding on some level, but it's not everywhere. So this is what they found. We ourselves have observed the same fact in many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance or pressure of the cranium. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. And of this truth, we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave. This is what the lithograph looks like. They found the mummy, a female mummy who was about 6 or 7 months pregnant. She was mummified. The fetus was still in her. They realized that. They went in to see what the fetus would look like. This is the lithograph from 1842. So what do we do with that? And again, it points to an outside agency manipulating the human genome, which, gee, surprise, that's exactly what the biblical narrative states, that there's an outside agency manipulating the human genome for its own ends, for its own devices. It's trying to create a hybrid race. Graham Hancock, in his wonderful book, The Supernatural, he's doing all this ayahuasca. He's blown away because he pops up there and the Greys are here. They're not supposed to be here, but they're there. And then at the very end of the book, after all the 40 ayahuasca trips, he boils it down, no pun intended, he boils it down to this. that was a good one. This is not a script, it's just off the top of the head. Anyway, drum roll, please. Are we on camera? Thank you. How are you? He boils it down to this, that whoever these entities are, they seem to be obsessed with our reproduction, obsessed with trying to have sex with us in some way and create a hybrid being. And I find that in all my research and all my studies, it links back inexorably to the Genesis 6 narrative.
Let me make a comment about this. All the skeptics say that these giant skulls are from binding. But how can you have a giant skull that's a fetus? There was never an opportunity to have a binding process. You can't.
And that's what's so fascinating about this. We are in the process, we've been in the process for over 18 months of attempting to get genetic material out of Peru. I'm looking at Richard and laughing because we are both so frustrated you have no idea. It's like they just don't care. They're not going to move. You can, waggle $1,000 and hey, no one cares. We're not going to do this. They move at their own pace. We are closer than we've ever been before. We're hoping that in September, it's really hot up here, by the way. In September, we will get the permit to go down. And the moment we do, we are on the next plane and we will take multiple samples. So we're hopeful. And we're going to divide them up in at least 2 different DNA labs so we'll know, because that's the only way. What's interesting is preliminary DNA testing, which was done in a lab. And I have spoken to the geneticist numerous times. In fact, I spoke to him yesterday. Mm-hmm. And he stated in an email, which Brian put on Facebook, which went viral, that whatever sample 3A was, the mitochondria, which comes from the female line, had DNA which was so different that he had no idea what he was looking at. It wasn't Homo sapien sapien. It wasn't Neanderthal. It wasn't Denisovan. It was something that he had never looked at before. So once again, when I saw that, I just said, okay, that's another step closer to proving our hypothesis that there's an outside agency that's manipulating the human genome for its own ends, to its own devices.
Let me ask you a question about ETs in general, or nefarious ET beings. Obviously, there's abductions going on.
Sure.
We've been visited in the past. In general, do you think that there's any good to them, or do you think they're malevolent?
It's a very complex issue, and Richard and I have argued this for, I don't know, years now. We argue it incessantly, and sometimes we take different sides of the argument, just for the fun of it. But look, we know that the bad guys are there, but we also know the good guys are there. What's interesting is when the good angels show up, or the good extraterrestrials, I'm just going to use terminology that I think you guys will embrace. If I say good angels, a lot of people will just go click, they'll just turn it off. If I say good extraterrestrials, then you'll listen, and that's why I'm using. To me, we're this close. We're not that far away in our paradigms. We're really not. We're so close in what we all know something's going on. That's why we're here in this room. All of us do. Many of us experience stuff. I think the good guys are there, but I also believe that they are in a retreat mode, and there's a reason for this. It's playing out along the prophetic playbook, and that prophetic playbook is there's someone who is coming, who is highly malevolent. In fact, about 10 days ago, less than that actually, most of you watched the stars in the sky, the conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. Mm-hmm. Many were saying it's the reemergence of the Bethlehem star. It's not. It's not the reemergence of the Bethlehem star. It's at the wrong time of the year. It doesn't have the Regulus in it, and it's in the wrong conjunction. It's actually in Ophiuchus, the serpent holder. We now believe that it's actually the sign of the anti-Messiah. That's what we think it is. Just saying. Just walking that for a bit.
You've heard of all these trumpet sounds going around the world for the last few years. Some people equate that to the book of Revelations, that the announcement of the second coming. Do you think that has something to do with these sounds?
I posted an article by Jay-Z Knight, who was on Coast to Coast, and she was talking about, I call it the coming great deception. She had another name for it from Ramtha. The coming great, it wasn't deception, it was something else. Basically, it's going to overwhelm the people, the planet. And you see, what's interesting is we are now in a time, unlike any other time in history. We are all connected. How many people remember the Fukushima earthquake just a short time ago? When we watched the tidal wave, that was in real time. That wasn't time delay, maybe a 3 or 5 second time delay. They had helicopters bouncing off the signal, off the satellites, and we were all watching the tidal wave come in, killing 20,000 people live on TV. That's how connected we are. They turn it on every now and then. You'll know they're extremely selective with it. Shock and Awe was one that they kind of turned it on with, right? We all sat in our living rooms and watched Shock and Awe. Why did they call it Shock and Awe? When you pronounce the glory that was in the temple, both the first and second temple, and that goes back in the biblical narrative, it's actually pronounced Shekinah. That's how it's pronounced. The American bastardization of it is Shekinah, but it's actually pronounced Shekinah. And so when you slow it down, Shekinah, it's like right in your face. How many people remember this year's, I'm way off topic here, but it's an interesting rabbit trail, Super Bowl. Katy Perry's doing the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all fun and games. It's Ishtar. It's the goddess Ishtar. When she rides out on the roaring lion, the woman rides the beast and she roars. It's all deliberate. There's coins of Ishtar riding the beast. At the end, when she's riding around on the star, that's Ishtar. It's right in your face. And if you know what to look for, okay, there it is. They are signaling. And I realize this is like tinfoil hat, but you guys all have tinfoil hat stuff too, so I'm in good company here, right? But I mean, it's crazy stuff. It's wacky stuff. But when you strip down the level of who Katy Perry really is, and you look at the ET video, there's a message that's going on here. We're being set up for something.
Now, with regards to the Vatican, what do you think about the Vatican actually embracing the topic?
We know that the Vatican has done this. They are positioning themselves to embrace some sort of an ET savior. Absolutely. The current Pope is coming over here. They're treating it like a royal visit. There are some who are positing that the Pope may spill the beans and say we've known about them. I mean, I could go on this for like an hour because it gets into Fatima and the apparitions and all this other stuff. It's bizarre. But we don't have time to get into that. And
One question about the Vatican. Why do you think they named their most
Lucifer?
recent... Yes, yes. Of all names, why Lucifer? Even though it's an acronym, why?
I don't want to comment on that on the record.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
But I'll just, it's not a good thing.
Okay. It's Catalina, is that what we're going to?
That's Catalina.
Now this is super fantastic. I hope everyone can see on the big screen.
guys
Rather
see
than
that?
me in LA say, see if you guys can notice what's peculiar on there.
So this is the quick backstory on this. I heard about that Ralph Gooden, who had this very bizarre museum on Catalina. He was hired by the High Museum in 1919 to 1921 to conduct primitive archaeological digs in and around the Channel Islands, which go from Santa Barbara down to San Diego. The High Museum was later gobbled up by the Smithsonian Institute. Isn't that interesting? So I've seen the collection, or what's left of it. It's all Native American. However, there was a cache of records which was found in 2013 up in the attic of that big round, right in Avalon Bay, that big round, the Wrigley Building, the theater. That's where John Borgina, the curator, the ex-curator of the Catalina Museum, found this cache of records. It took me about 8 months, 9 months to get permission and a $1,000 contribution to the new museum before I was allowed access. And I was more than happy to do that. So I walk in, and everything is in boxes. Everything. It's all been cataloged. It's all in manila folders, which are then in museum boxes, which then put in a safe. And all these pictures I'm going to show you, the public doesn't get to see them, or at least didn't. This was my discovery. This is my intellectual property. Some of you who saw the Vieira brothers in Search of a Lost Giants, they made it look like the Vieiras discovered the photograph. They didn't discover it. I sent it to Jim. I sent it as a photo to Jim, and we all kissed and made up and everything. It's all good. They had me on the show. I got to talk about how I discovered it. Ralph Gooden is 5'8" tall. In front of him is a very large guy. Let's see what happens. The first thing we do is we take Ralph out and we stand him up. And there he is. Next thing you do is we take the bones out. By the way, I had 3 different people with computer programs analyze the photograph. All right? There was no collusion between the 3 of them. They didn't know what the other 2 were doing. But they were all analyzing to try to get the height of the photograph. So here's the 5'8" Ralph Gooden. They stand the giant up. Look at the size of the skull. At this time, it becomes very evident that we have a real disparity. And 8'6" is rounded down. It's actually closer to 8'9". So to avoid sensationalism, I should have said, it's a 9-footer. Well, we call it a 9-footer, but it's actually 8'9". So let's dumb it down and round it off to 8.5 feet. It's huge. It's huge. And you can see by the bones that it just towers over Ralph Gooden. Catalina Island. Why don't you know about it? Why won't they tell you? Why won't they tell us? They know, and it's deliberately obfuscated. Oh, well, that sounds like a conspiratologist. Rap, watch this. So Rick and I go back about 3 months ago because we want to film me in the museum talking about this for Watchers 9 or for Watchers 10. We want to do a segment. So Rick and I walk in. This is just some of what it would look like. So can you see that? This is in the Catalina Museum.
What's missing?
And I go to the curator and I say, where's the rest of the picture? And she goes, this is all they gave me. Now, it's deliberate. That picture was tucked away. No one knew of its existence. I got it on the map. I had it analyzed. They didn't analyze it. The anthropologists and archaeologists who looked at the picture, they looked at it because it was cataloged under photographs, Catalina Ralph Gooden. They looked at it. Someone or a group of people analyzed it from their particular paradigm. But they put it in an envelope. No one did anything with that till I got a hold of it and I had it analyzed and discovered that we actually found 2 9-footers on the island. We also found cone heads and elongated skulls on the island. And those are just the pictures that I was able to find. John Borgina came on the record in On the Trail of a Nephilim, Volume 2, and stated that some of the pictures went missing.
Really?
Oh, they would never do that, L.A. Come on. These are scientists. They're going to stand by what is true. They were in the quest for truth. Unless, of course, it doesn't jibe with their paradigm. And then they do this. And this is a smoking gun, folks. It's an absolute smoking gun. That's what it should look like. I mean, if you're not outraged by that, we should storm Catalina tomorrow. Who's with me? Just joking. But you know what I mean? Seriously. Right? Oh, this is the Jim Vieira clip. Can we play that?
No, let's play it.
This is on the In Search of a Lost Giants. Watch how they spin it. I talked about the Nephilim point to the supernatural. Watch how they spin it back to the Darwinian paradigm.
Look at the skull size.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely huge.
Wow. Yes.
So we think it's a smoking gun. I think it's a smoking gun.
What's the takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is this. In my opinion, this skeleton does two things. First, it points back to the veracity of the Native American oral tradition that there were giants here. Second, it points back to the biblical narrative of the Nephilim being on the earth. And I find that absolutely fascinating. The Nephilim are, in fact, the progeny of supernatural entities.
The biblical passage is about the Nephilim being a creation of the sons of God interbreeding with the daughters of men. So this interbreeding action created a race of giants who I believe were portrayed as malevolent.
Could this biblical account of the sons of God interbreeding with the daughters of men to create the giant Nephilim be rooted in an ancient truth?
Could all this have a supernatural explanation like A Marzulli suggests? I'm not sure. I can think of another scenario.
Jim believes it could be an ancient account of interbreeding between two species of early man.
It sounds pretty freaky, but the idea of interbreeding is a reality. You have Neanderthals and humans interbreeding. You have Denisovans 40,000 years ago interbreeding with Neanderthals and humans. It's a proven fact, actually, by science that you had these different species interbreeding. But there might be a mystery species that is mixed in there.
For Jim, recent discoveries make this possibility very real. In the early 2000s, Russian archaeologists found fragments of bone and a tooth in a Siberian cave. DNA analysis at the Max Planck Institute in Germany revealed that they belonged to a previously unknown species of ancient human, now called Denisovan.
To have all we know about the Denisovans be just two pieces of bone finds, tells you that, who knows? There could be a new startling find any day. Why not ancient humans and some undiscovered, as of yet, species of giant hominid?
Completely spun it back into Darwinism, and they always show the same thing. They always show the progression. We see that down in Peru. We see it everywhere, of some chimpanzee deciding to wake up on a Monday and stand up and start walking. I mean, why aren't they doing it today? I mean, right? And this whole thing changes, and they always look kind of stupid, right? They always look like brutish and everything. They're just making us all up. I mean, with all due respect, I mean, come on, guys, you're making it up. You don't know what these people look like. You have one tooth and you call it Denisovan, and then you show me allegedly what it looks like from one tooth? Come on. That's not fair. You're being intellectually dishonest. You're painting a picture to fit your paradigm. Why not just be truthful and say, we have no stinking idea how we got here? No one does. I don't have any idea. I believe in the biblical narrative. I believe in a super being who somehow created us. Watson and Crick, the co-discoverers of DNA. Crick was a vexed man. When he saw the complexity of the deoxyribonucleic double helix of life, the spiral of life, the DNA molecular structure, this is a quote I use, that if you had all the time in the world, billions of years, there's no way just one protein chain is going to happen by accident. It's crazy because this thing is so complex and so carefully and wonderfully crafted. How come your arm stops growing like this? Why doesn't it just keep growing at 20 feet long? Whoa, that would be a real pain, wouldn't it? Of course, it'd be good for basketball, right? But I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the coding of the DNA is absolutely incredible. And this is what's amazing. When Stein sits down, you got to watch Expelled if you haven't seen it. When Ben Stein sits down with Richard Dawkins, he says, well, how did we get here? Dawkins immediately goes to panspermia, a race of extraterrestrials who had evolved to some high plateau of civilization through some sort of Darwinian process, created us and then seeded us through here. And that's what he holds to, because there's no supernatural. I am a frank supernaturalist. I believe that there's another dimension that's more real than what this is. I think we're in a holodeck, if you really want to know what I believe. I honestly think that the universe we see, it's a very complex hologram, but it's a hologram nonetheless. This is not reality. We're here, yeah, that hurt, I get it. You know, shoot me, I'm going to be dead, I'll bleed. I get all that. It's real, but it's not real. There's a greater reality, and that's why the NDEs, people come back from dying, and they go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe where I was. This place looks like a shadow. Everything was vibrant. The music was incredible. The colors, the people, and here I'm back again. What am I going to do? I mean, they freak out like that. And who can blame them? Because they've touched the other side, and they know that there's something that's just absolutely astounding.
What do you think it's going to take to wake everybody up, to get people out of this dream state in the holographic universe?
Look, I have no idea. Probably the fact, well, I could go down all sorts of trails here. Unfortunately, most people won't wake up. The only thing that will that would cause the entire planet to shift, and this, by the way, goes along with the 2,000-year-old prophecy, which says that men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. There's also another one that there'll be a great falling away before the anti-Messiah is revealed. So from my position, I think that what we're looking at is if you had mile-wide ships appear and just sit there, everything changes instantly. Instantly.
The problem is people will shoot them.
That they can try. Good luck with that.
That's true.
Like
That's
Ricky
true.
Sorrell in Stevensville, Texas.
Yeah.
He thought about it. He looked up and maybe I shouldn't. Smart move, Ricky. But I think that's the paradigm shift. And when that happens, Stephen Bassett weighed in on Watcher 7. And he's right. It's ET, 24/7, 365. That's all everyone will be talking about. And if they come bearing gifts, free energy, and some sort of an implantable chip, which will extend the lifespan disease-free to 500 years, most of the people will run to get the implant.
What do you think of the fact that 5,000 patents have been suppressed under the name of national security over the last several decades?
I think, and we're rolling here, so I'm going to get in big trouble for this one, but who cares? I know that we're monitored already, but I think we basically live in a fascist state, in soft tyranny. When 5 people, and I know that some people might have a problem with this, but when 5 people can overturn what was the standard of Western civilization for a couple of thousand years, that's not right. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's just not right. Marriage is between a man and a woman. We can argue that till the cows come home. I really don't care. That's my personal belief. And it's not democracy. It's 5 people telling us what we're going to do. That's just one example. And we could go on. The bottom line is we are being force-fed Obamacare. We're being force-fed Obama trade. We are being force-fed all this stuff. And the fact that there wasn't rioting on the steps of the Bastille on Saturday morning is telling. The sheep are asleep. They don't care. Most people could give a flip about what's going on. And so they just keep doing what they're going to do. And I think Jade Helm, for all you conspiratologists, tinfoil hats, and I've got mine right on right now. It's invisible, but it's there, let me tell you.
Well, talk about Jade Helm for a second.
Jade Helm, I think it's a precursor. It's a drill. They know what's coming. They know what's coming, and they're prepping for it. And isn't it interesting? It's all along the southern border. If you have an EMP in this country, the country is so divided, right? I know I'm getting political here, but that's okay. Forgive me. The country is so divided. And I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, or nothing. We are divided. We haven't come together since 9/11, which, of course, most of us know was a false flag event. But that's another rabbit trail, which we don't have time to get into. They know something is coming. Is it an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, which would completely wipe out everything in this room? Everything. Your watches, the lights, the cameras, everything. Nothing works, no electric. And but guess what? When you go to the parking lot and start your car, that doesn't work. So now what? Now what do we do? How far do you live from home? I'm like an hour and a half away. How do I get back there?
Can't run to the bank.
Can't run to the bank because nothing will work. See where it's going? Look at Greece. The people in Greece stood up and said, we're not going to sign this stupid deal, and everybody caved. Whoa, isn't that interesting? And notice every time every time there's a shooting, the first thing that they do, better round up those guns. Save the children. Save the children. The Second Amendment, don't take my word for it, do your own research. The Second Amendment was written to protect the citizens, that's you and me, from a tyrannical government. That's what it was for. And if you don't have a gun, go out and buy one and take a gun class and learn how to use it.
And here's the sad part. If they want to take away the gun rights, you think the gangsters or the murderers out there buy guns legally? No.
Of course not.
You know, there's AK-47s on the street, yet you can't buy them anywhere in continental United States, but they're there. So obviously just taking away that right is just going to put real citizens, innocent citizens, in danger
Absolutely.
more than anybody
Absolutely.
else. Okay, here's an interesting question before we run out of time. A good portion of people that I've spoken to, I've spoken to well over 1,000 people that have been taken. And a good number of them say that when they're being taken, when they pray, that for some reason their takers stop. What do you know about this?
I know a lot about it. This is, look, if I had 3 hours, I could really explain this in depth. I don't. It's a typical 30-second soundbite. The bottom line is there is a force, a power in the universe, which is incredibly benevolent. I dare use the word holy, but he is. I think it's a he. In fact, I know it's a he. But it's very complex. And the interesting thing is he will come into your life if you ask him. And he will change your life. And if you want to, you can connect with him just by asking him in. And he will come in and begin to change things, because it's happened to me. I had an experience 35 years ago which changed my life completely. Completely changed my entire paradigm. And I didn't know even what was happening to me at the time. I'm just going like, what? And I'm not talking religion here, folks. I'm not talking about monks with funny haircuts and priests and tapestries and costumes. It's all man-made trappings and paintings and, luminous obiscum and all this crazy. It's all wacky stuff. It's all invented by men. It has nothing to do with anything. It all came after the experience. And 12 men, actually 11, were completely changed, and the women were changed in an upper room 2,000 years ago. Their lives were completely turned upside down, and then they turned the world upside down. And then in the 3rd century, the Romans got it, made it the state religion, and the whole thing went downhill. But there's a remnant, and the remnant has been all throughout history. And when you pray, even if you don't know who you're praying to, you just ask, help me. Most of the time, he'll show up. If you say the word Yeshua, and you know what that is, and I know what that... Look, I'm in spiritual warfare all the time. I'll just give you one example. Can I have time for that?
Yeah.
One example. I'm in this true story, okay? True story. I'm in an undisclosed location. I can't tell you where it is. I'm with Chief Joseph Riverwood. No one knows where we're going except my wife. No one has a clue as to where we're going and what we're doing there. We're in an undisclosed location. We have a nice dinner. We go to the lake. There's a lake right by the place where we're eating. We sit on a bench like this, and except I'm reversed. I'm here. Chief Joseph is here. We're talking, swapping some stories and stuff. There's a kid playing in a boat, a teenager, 18, 19 years old, something like that. I don't pay any attention to him, but Joseph's going to see him as peripheral vision. All of a sudden, Joseph goes, L.A., did you hear that? And I go, no, what? Because I'm too many years in a rock band. Anyway, so he goes, that kid just said in a deep, growling voice, L.A., we know who you are. I'm not making this up. So we stand up, we face him, we immediately go on the attack verbally, and we begin to pray out loud and rebuke the unclean spirit, because this guy's completely full-on possessed. The moment we mention the word Yeshua, he goes like this, covers his ears, and runs away. So that's just, there was more to the story, but that's just enough to whet your appetite. How did they know? L.A., we know, we, not singular, L.A., we know who you are. True story. And we were able to defeat that entity, because greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world.
Sadly, we are out of time. I have to save the questions that I have for you, but I want to give you one last chance. If you have any final words, anything you'd like to say to anybody.
Don't take any wooden nickels. No.
Go ahead.
I just want to show these guys one thing.
Yeah.
Let me close with this. We never got to the Raman spectroscopy, but that's okay. These are all 2,000-year-old prophetic texts. Men faint from fear for what is coming on the earth. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. The fallen cherub comes with all signs and lying wonders. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible, because they did not believe the truth. El Elyon, the Most High God, El Elyon, that's what the word is, sends them strong delusion. Yeshua states, it will be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. It's all there in plain sight, written thousands of years ago. All you need to do is decipher it. Thanks for listening.
A Marzulli, everybody. Round of applause.
It is really cool.
Oh, yeah, you're plugged in.
And he walked away with the